All right, a couple of observations since the launch of ProveIt 8 days ago. Take 0. All right, forgive me. I just got out of the gym. I'm all sweaty and gross. However, I was thinking about this during my training session. I was going over the results. So each night, the committee project team for ProveIt 2025, we have a meeting at 4:30 Central. We kind of just go over, what has the community been saying? We look at signups, we look at the number of rooms that have been booked at the hotel, and we talk about what it is vendor sponsors have been saying, and so I was thinking about the numbers from last night. So one of the things that Vaughn reports on every evening is the number of attendee signups, so the number of tickets that have been sold for the conference. There's a breakdown by their role. So we have end users, so that includes anybody who works in industry or manufacturing. We're looking for the people who are basically in operations or in IT that are, part of the digital strategy. So we have that group, we have systems integrators, and then we have software and hardware OEMs, and then we have students, and then we have other. And then Vaughn gives me a percentage, he gives the team a percentage. And one of the things that I noticed was that of all the tickets that have been sold up to this point, more than 60% are end users. So it goes in order, it goes 60% are end users, then you've got systems integrators are next, then vendors are next, and you would expect that because the OEM vendors are going to end up being the vendor sponsors, so they're going to get their tickets through participating in ProveIt, doing an actual session. But systems integrators can also do that too. One of the things we've been telling OEM vendors is, hey, you can partner with a systems integrator, so you could have a vendor plus that's actually Vaughn calling me right now. You could have a systems integrator and a vendor do ProveIt together, do their session together, split the vendor sponsorship and everything. But one of the interesting observations is the fact that there's a sheer number of signups are manufacturers. They're the actual end users, which makes sense because this conference is for the end user. It's for, this is where you go to see application. Like, you can take what you're going to see. People are going to, the vendor sponsors and the integrators are going to build a solution in 16 weeks or less, and they're going to do it on our infrastructure we're providing, and then they're going to show it off at the exhibit, and then they're going to present it on stage in front of the entire audience. We don't have multiple tracks. Like, everybody is going to see the same presentations, right? So the target is for the end user. But what's interesting is if you know the history of conferences in our industry, end users are not the primary attendee of a conference. And oftentimes when end users go to a conference, they are being brought by salespeople. Like when I started my career in manufacturing, and this is the big observation. Me personally, when I was working in mining and printing, steel and tier 1 automotive, working like on the actual plant floor, I have a little comment about that here in a second. It never occurred to me to go to a conference. Like, I'd gone to Rockwell's Automation Fair. I was invited by our distributor. They sold us the tickets. So Rockwell goes to the distributor and has them. They sold us the tickets. They gave us some kind of discount. They wined and dined us. It was so much more like the good old boy type thing. My distributors were always awesome. Especially CED Baldwin Hall. I loved them. But I didn't really learn anything at that conference, like at Automation Fair. I would go every year because I'd want to see like what Rockwell was up to, but I didn't learn anything. I never went back to my job and applied anything I learned at the conference. And so I just started not going to conferences. And I found that most people that I worked with in operations, in manufacturing, they didn't go to conferences either. Especially if they had been around a while, they knew what the conferences were about, and so they just didn't go. And it is a huge signal that that more than 60% of all the tickets sold to this point are end users. So people in industry, oil and gas, or who actually work in operations doing digital, or they're in operations, they want to learn digital, or manufacturers. That is a huge change. Like, that is a big fucking deal. It basically means that what we've done is we have created the conference that end users have been waiting for. And, we're doing it by focusing on application and getting rid of all the marketing bullshit. And they know, or at least I think, they know that we're going to really test the vendors. We're going to take my experience, we're going to take our team's experience, the technical team, and we're going to test the vendors. And it's a huge opportunity for the vendors. Honestly, I would argue it's a bigger opportunity for the vendors, because the vendors are going to get a chance to do an apples to apples comparison through application of how does my tool, like it comes up all the time. When do I use Ignition's Historian versus Canary Labs Historian? When do I use Tatsoft's Embedded Historian versus Canary Labs or OSI Pi or Timescale DB or Influx DB? You're going to get a chance to see them in application on the same infrastructure. And so you'll be able to understand, oh, this is where Influx fits. Oh, this is where Timescale fits. Oh, this is where I should use BigQuery for long time range time series analysis, right? This is where Canary fits. It's going to be a chance for people to see where all the tools fit together. So it does make sense. That's obviously the thing that manufacturers have been waiting for. There's another observation I've made here, and I've said this before, and I don't generally talk about it a lot, but there is an observation. Once I moved into consulting in 2012, so I was in manufacturing from 99, 2000 to 2012. I worked for the end user, and I worked for my very first systems integrator in 2012. And within 2 years, I won 2 Firebrand Awards. So one Firebrand Award, I was like a supporting cast member. And then the other Firebrand Award I won, I was leading the project, the largest standalone SCADA system in the world. I did those awards I won in 3 years from becoming a consultant after 12 years in manufacturing. One of the things that I expected when I became a consultant was that there would be a lot of people who did what I did, which was sort of like they cut their teeth on the plant floor and then they took what they learned and they became a consultant. That is not how our industry works. Like, the vast majority of systems integrators, and when I say vast majority, I'm telling you, 80, 90% have no manufacturing experience. Like, and now that I don't, I'm selling Intelligent Integration, and I don't have a dog in this fight. No one can say, hey, you're just saying this shit because you own an integrator. I'm not going to own an integrator, okay? And I've held this opinion for a long time. I just don't say it because it would seem self-serving. Now I can say it. The vast majority of integrators don't have absolutely no manufacturing experience at all. Like, they don't have a single person on their team who has ever worked in manufacturing, like worked on the plant floor and understands anything about manufacturing. All of it they've learned on the consulting side. And in fact, there's a systems integrator, they're a premier integrator with inductive automation, where the owner of that company is a relatively young guy, and he literally went from college directly to a consultant. And I've always said this. When people ask me about his company, I'm not going to talk about it publicly because it's not fair. I've always said, they would say, well, what do you think about so and so? And I'm like, well, he's probably a good engineer and he probably hires good engineers, but he knows nothing about manufacturing. Like, there are some truisms in manufacturing, okay? If any of you work on the plant floor, and I mean in operations, that is, you are either supporting production or you're in production, okay? So you could be an electrician, a mechanic, you could be an applications engineer on the plant floor, a controls engineer, a technician, or in any of the support positions. Here are some truisms. Nobody on the plant floor thinks that IT policies make any sense whatsoever. In fact, they don't give a shit about IT. They've never ever said, no one has ever said this, we are not going to do that because that goes against an IT policy on the plant floor, ever. No one on the plant floor talks about IT security. No one on the plant floor talks about, no one on the plant floor ever chooses anything over production. Production is king. And they do whatever it takes to get the widgets out the back door. Like, whatever it takes. Okay? Production is king. There's no one on the plant floor has ever said, oh, because they built this data model and this information model in the PLC, I can't make a change to that UDT because it's going to break something in the data acquisition or data storage layer. That's never been said, ever. Okay? In fact, what they do say is if you're going to put any digital tool that's going to connect to our operations, that is the thing that produces widgets, then you must be able to decouple it. We must be able to turn it off, unplug it, and it doesn't stop production. Okay? If you don't work in manufacturing, if you've never worked in manufacturing, you've never worked on the plant floor, and you don't understand how manufacturers actually think, what their motivations actually are, if you don't understand who are the smartest people in any manufacturing operation, it's not the executives, it's not the plant manager, it's not anyone in IT. Literally the people who know the business are the people who operate the equipment, they work on the equipment, they support the equipment, they do all the production. The people who work in operations are literally the smartest people in any manufacturing operation. Literally. It's in every manufacturer I've ever come across, industry or manufacturing, it is always the people who do the actual work. They know the business. They know all the problems. The problem is they don't have any of the power. And so they have to deal with, I even saw this in my very first job, the number of kids, consultants, who would come straight out of college and think they knew everything. And the truth was they knew nothing. They had an education, but they knew nothing. And one of the biggest problems we have in our industry is, and I'm going to pick on the integrators for a while, and you're going to hear me talk a lot more about what's wrong with systems integration, because I didn't talk about it before because it would sound self-serving, because I owned a systems integrator. Now that I'm selling Intellic integration to my team, I can go ahead and talk about this, and I can talk about a lot of the things we did at Intellic to mitigate this stuff. One of the biggest issues is of the vast majority of integrators are hiring people straight out of college or right out of tech school, and they literally have no manufacturing experience. They are making judgment calls, they are making decisions about what to do for a manufacturer when they are completely decoupled from what really matters to manufacturers on the plant floor. And I think what we are seeing with this data from the number of tickets that are being sold that are literally the end users, and then if you look at it, it goes end users 60%, and then it's about maybe 30% systems integrators, and then it's other. It's students, it's vendors, but the vendors will primarily be, the OEMs will primarily be the vendor sponsors. If that holds true, what we're going to end up having is about 400 to 500 manufacturers or industry end users. We're going to end up with 150 to 200 system integrators, and the rest will be vendors and students, okay, to put it in perspective. And in terms of people, not companies. And that is definitely a different distribution than any other conference in our industry. And that is a big deal. The fact that that is what the data is showing us. What it is the end user, is becoming more digitally fluent, and so they are ready to go get their own answers. They are tired of being sold a bill of goods by the OEMs and the integrator, and they're going to do it themselves. That's what's going to happen. They're going to do it themselves. And by the way, they should. It doesn't mean they shouldn't work with integrators. You should. But any integrator, you should ask them their philosophy. Is your philosophy to go deep and stay long? Is your philosophy to just be my engineering firm forever, in perpetuity? Or you should ask your integrator, this is a question you should ask every systems integrator and your OEM. What's your exit strategy? Like, when do you know your work here is done? Here at my manufacturer. All right. Just a quick thought there. Like, subscribe, comment down below. Let me know what you think about those observations, and I'll see you in the next one.